Hello and welcome to this special broadcast. I'm Akshita Nandagopal. What a year 2021 has turned out to be. There were many highs, there were also many lows. And as we ring in 2022, what really should be your motto? What really should be your mood? What is the kind of emotion that you should have going forward? We're going to discuss this and much more. Joining me on this broadcast is the founder of Isha Foundation, Sadhguru. Sadhguru, namaskaram. Thank you for joining us here on India Today. Absolute pleasure speaking to you again.
Namaskaram, Akshata. Wonderful to be talking to you. And I hope I'm seeing all kinds of alerts going up in Delhi. I hope all of you at India Today are doing well and safe. Thank you. Please.
Fingers crossed it stays well in 2022, but as of now, yes, thank you, Sadhguru. We're all doing well. Before I talk about the future and the next 365 days, I want to focus first on 2021. Sadhguru, to you, what was the biggest highlight, the biggest message for humanity really from 2021?
Well, 2021 and even 2020 for that matter has been a challenging year for individual people, for businesses, for institutions and for nations as a whole and for the world at large. So the challenge is about this pandemic spreading seamlessly across because pandemic has no distinction of color, race, creed, religion and nationalities, it's just getting everybody. The richest nation in the world, like United States, has more deaths than even India, considering the population. So, it is not sparing anybody. Essentially, the message is this, that this is a kind of problem that if we are conscious human beings, we could ride this with least amount of damage. If we are compulsive human beings, we'll pay a huge price. I think that's a fundamental message, that the solution for this is a very conscious approach to life. Now, coming to what it has done to us, well, I must tell you, Isha Foundation itself is sitting here for last 2 years without any revenue, but our commitments to education, our commitments to farmers, our commitments to ecological movements, we have not gone back on it, we are still fulfilling that. And it's been financially extremely hard. So many things have changed, we've changed our lifestyles, we've even changed our food, what we eat and everything about our lives. So what I'm saying is, the only thing it's demanding is change in lifestyle. Lifestyle is only a consequence of times in which we live, we should not make it too big. Life is important, lifestyle is of the times. See, 20 years ago how we were living, with how much we were living, and today with how we are living is very different. All that's happened to us is, maybe we have to roll back our lifestyle to 10–15 years ago, and we should not suffer that so much, because the important aspect of life is life, not lifestyle. But I think too much significance is being given to lifestyles.
Do you think also, Sadhguru, you're talking about a change in lifestyle, do you also believe that a consequence of the pandemic in the last 1 or maybe 2 years has been that people have become a lot more spiritual?
This is a fundamental thing that probably, I've spoken about this many times and people think maybe it is a bit morbid, but I'm always reminding people of their mortal nature. Because without being conscious that I'm mortal, without being conscious that I have a limited amount of time as life, you will never think of what's beyond this. Only when the question comes in your mind, what is beyond this physiological, psychological and social drama that I'm playing right now, what is beyond this? When this question arises, only then you become spiritual. You don't become spiritual by praying, you don't become spiritual by asking for this and that. You become spiritual only when you clearly understand that you are mortal. I think mortality is hanging in our face, every day we have to think that, if we do one wrong step, is it going to take my life? This awareness has come and definitely it will move people to an inquiry, what is beyond this? Okay, we are well and fine, we thought, most people think they're forever. Suddenly, the pandemic has brought this awareness, your life is not forever, people who are around us, almost everybody has lost somebody who was dear to them, either in the form of a friend or a relative or somebody. And for me, hundreds and hundreds of people that I know very well have unfortunately passed away. So, there is no way you can avoid the fact of mortality. And being conscious of this fundamental fact naturally moves people to make an inquiry as to what is beyond our physical nature, and that is spiritual process anyway.
In 2021, it was a mixed bag. Initially, yes, we were hit so badly by the second wave of COVID. Mid-2021, it definitely seemed like we were coming out of this pandemic. But then now again, everyone's talking about COVID, everyone's talking about 2022 having pretty much the same trajectory as 2020 and 2021. As you mentioned, Sadhguru, we've all lost someone dear to us because of the second wave, because of this virus. In such circumstances, and with this sense of deja vu, of negativity all around you, how do you really enter into a new year with positivity, with hope?
See, we need to understand this, we exist here as life only because of microbial life, both within the soil, which is in trillions and trillions, and also in our own body, because over 90% of our body is actually microbial life. Only 10% is genetic material from our parentage. So, we have always been living with the help of microbial life. Some of them become a little truant and they cause a little bit of problem to us. But this problem is happening the way it is happening. One reason why 20th century is facing this kind of situations is, one thing is we are traveling seamlessly across the world, so naturally it spreads everywhere, that is one important aspect. But apart from that, it is also every scientist in the world, the US CDC has repeatedly pointed out that soil nutrients and nutrients in the food not being as it should be is one important, a major factor for people to be affected the way they're affected. It's a known, established science, medical science, that your vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin B6 and B12 and folate and iron and copper and magnesium, these things make a huge difference in how much resistance you have, particularly to upper respiratory tract infections, which is what COVID is on one level. So, this lack of nutrients to what extent means? For example, today it is very popular in America to eat salads because they think that is a healthy thing to do. So the main things are lettuce and tomatoes and similar things which are in the plate. The nutrient value of this has come down by 90% compared to what it was in early 20th century, 90%. So you are eating that kind of food and you think you can live on this planet, no, you have lost your resistance. In India, in the last 25 years, on an average, most vegetables and fruits have lost over 40% of their nutrients. Micronutrients are just missing in the food because we are trying to grow food with salts without understanding it is a whole plethora of life which makes this life happen. We as a life are a consequence of the life that is beneath the soil. So this life we have not taken care of. Today in India, people are saying 62% of India's soil, the organic content is below 0.5%, which is disastrous, which is on the verge of desertification. So this is something we have to address. This is one reason in 2022 we have taken up this movement of Conscious Planet, because this is the only issue right now, conscious behavior and a strong life. This is what we need to create. This is not one day's commitment, this has to be a life commitment.
You've essentially answered my next question. I was going to ask you the very cliched question about what your resolution for 2022 is, but you've essentially given us a sense of what it's going to be. But tell us, Sadhguru, where you decided to start on this movement of Save Soil. I must tell you that I saw your video also and it was extremely educational, because I honestly had no idea that you could change so much around you by just ensuring that we focus and transform the soil.
See, the thing is, we have become too removed, our education systems have become too removed from the natural process of life. We are trying to understand everything as material. We are not looking at life as life. We have no perception of life in the process of what we call as science. We only looking at the ingredients as individual things. Even now, the soil testing that's being done in India is all about the chemical content in the soil. Yes, But we need to understand chemical content in the soil is a consequence of the life process that's happening in the soil. There is a phenomenal, a marketplace. I'm calling it a marketplace because it is a marketplace, phenomenal marketplace beneath the soil, that the microbes are constantly producing these minerals and nutrients and chemicals which are life-making in nature, and they are doing a deal with the plants and trees which will give them carbon sugar for them, and they are capturing the carbon from the atmosphere and passing it on to them. Without this marketplace, without this exchange, this is being conducted with such judiciousness. Some of the studies, what they show is, the complexity of this marketplace is way beyond any stock exchange on the planet. Believe me, it is so complex and so phenomenally conducted. So this, if you destroy this exchange process, there is really no life. You can have a soup of chemicals, but for it to become life, it needs the smaller life which is the origin of life on this planet. From a single-celled creature, we have become so complex. So we need to understand, we stand here today as a consequence of that life. And if we destroy that, there is no life as such. And today, every responsible scientist is saying by 2040 or 2045, we will be producing 40% less food than what we are producing right now, and our populations will be over 9 billion. That's not a world you want to live in. That's not a world where you want to leave the next generation in. But that's exactly what we are doing. The very next year, the 2022 itself, I was in conversation with the World Food Program, which is the largest program. Last year, they had a budget of over 9 billion, providing food to many nations across Africa, South America and Asia. This year, they want an increase of over 60% budget because they are seeing that 2022 is going to be a series of famines in many nations in Africa, mainly because of soil degradation. Right now, 42% of African soil is degraded. They're saying by 2030 is just 8 years away. By 2030, 2/3 of African soil will be degraded. And the migration that it will set forth, they are expecting about 1.2 to 1.4 billion people migrating. Can you imagine the havoc?
The message that I get from all that you've just told us, and I think that every one of our viewers will take forward going into 2022, is essentially you reap what you sow. And that's why this kind of a movement is so very important. I'm also curious, Sadhguru, about how you handpick these issues. You've had some very successful movements in the past, like Kaveri Calling, or the Save Tamil Nadu Temples, on which we spoke also a few months ago. Why did you decide that this was an issue that needed to be picked up, especially when there's such a large discourse on things like climate change and global warming, and not many really focus on the health of our soil?
See, it is not that I handpick issues. I live on this planet. I have lived on this planet for over 6 decades. Everybody claims they live on this planet, but mostly they're living in their head. But I have nothing in my head, so I live on this planet. I'm like a worm. I'm literally like a worm, because what happens to the planet is happening to me. I can every moment I can feel it in every cell in my body. So I did not handpick these things. I have grown up around farms, I have grown up around Kaveri River. I know exactly what is happening just from the way my life responds to it, not from any scientific knowledge. I am not a scientist, I am not an environmentalist. So as a part of this, I started what is called as Project Green Hands, through which we planted about 57 million trees. And then it evolved into Rally for Rivers, because I saw it doesn't matter, you plant trees, I plant trees, but next generation may remove it. It needs a policy change. So we worked for the policy change. Fortunately, 162 million people supported the movement. Because of that, the governments took it up and made it a recommendation policy for all the 28 states. But the next thing was action on the ground, because unless you show it, that what is possibly shown on the ground, it will not be a reality. So we took Kaveri Calling. Today, our volunteers ceaselessly working through this pandemic. They have planted over 67 million trees in the last 2 years. and converted about 125,000 farmers to tree-based agriculture, where clearly it is visible. We have done this over 22 years, it's not a one-day project. So this is not like I'm handpicking, this is an evolution of the movement which I started somewhere in 1994.
Okay, okay, and let's hope that, people who are watching this also get a lot more aware about this issue, because I do believe that once I also researched into it, it was truly an eye-opener into what really the health of our soil is and how it can help in really transforming the health of the world as well. Back to issues, Sadhguru, that really, there are… Sure.
You said climate change. See, I was talking to an environment minister of one of the nations, and this person was at Glasgow 2020, COP26, and I was told for 1 week the minister was there and they did not hear the word soil. When nearly 40% of climate change is affected by soil, why are we not talking about soil is something that everybody needs to answer. There is something not right about it.
And I hope that narrative changes going into 2022. I'm glad we're having this conversation right in the beginning of the year to put that into perspective. Sadhguru, there are some issues also that I'd like to talk about. As I said in the beginning, right now everyone's talking about COVID, everyone's talking about what 2022 is going to look like. Amid all of that, as is always the case in India, it's again election season. Do you think, and there's a huge debate over this, do you think that at such a time when, there are restrictions on all of us, there are curbs on all of us, these kind of massive election rallies, political events should be allowed to happen?
See, if you ask me, there is a democratic process. How we conduct it is the issue. We're not questioning the democratic process. Now, the ruling party in any given state or in the country would be happy if you postpone the election by 5 years. What's the problem? My 5-year term will become 10-year term, what is my problem, all right? So it is the opposition which definitely wants the election. Because ruling party is willing to postpone, why 3 months? 5 years, let us be really safe, because many scientists are saying this pandemic could last anywhere between 4 to 6 years. So let's put it off by 6 years, every ruling government will be very happy. So we cannot do that. We definitely cannot do that. So democratic process has to go on. Now the question is only about how we conduct it. Do we need massive rallies? Well, unfortunately, the Indian population and the Indian way of doing has always been an emotive way of appealing, not too much… Unfortunately, there are enough examples in the country when the governments do what needs to be done long-term. Those things did not… they never got re-elected. Only when they did short-term things and made emotive appeals, they got re-elected. This is a well-known fact. You being in the news, you definitely know that. So right now, this is one aspect that I'm pushing for. Why we are trying to move 3 to 3.5 billion people across the world is because in a democracy, the most important responsibility that a citizen has is what sort of government do you elect? Do they have long-term concerns for the nation and for the people? So, why nobody is picking up soil, I'm going back to this because it is very connected. Why nobody is picking up soil is because the government terms are 5 years in India, 4 years in other countries. Why would somebody take up something which will take 15, 20 years to yield results? They don't want to do it because it's a long-term commitment of resources, everything. Every nation has crunch for resources. Only if people say, only if people speak that we want this to happen, they will take this. So we need to reverse this instead of political leaders speaking to the people. I don't know, we must evolve devices, apps and news media in so many ways where election time people should speak. These 120 or 30 crore people must speak what kind of government they want, what are their concerns, rather than politicians continuously speaking of what it is. So, for a politician to respond, for a leader to respond, it's just one person, he can use various mediums to speak, but people should speak. For people to speak, we must provide the necessary digital processes through which they can do it. This may not happen immediately, but I think we must aim at this, where election time, Every citizen should be allowed to speak, and maybe it should be made mandatory, you must say. As a citizen, it's your responsibility to say where you want the nation to go. At least if they don't know how to articulate 5 things which are most important or 10 things which are most important. Do you want this or you don't want this? At least to that extent, the nation should speak. Then the need for these massive rallies will go away. Right now, the only way they will win the election is by gathering a mass of people, by proving their strength, because even if a leader is doing fantastic work, suppose his rally has very thin attendance, believe me, the perception will change and he will lose the election. So they want to make sure large number of people are there, COVID or no COVID. They want people there because that has become the process, and it's very, very important we strive to change this process. It's not a one-day affair.
But that's what brings me to the question, Sadhguru. We always pride ourselves in being a thriving democracy. The reality, however, is that the election season, you see issues that politicians want, only discussed. We don't see issues that you and I perhaps or any citizen wants.
There is no election season, it's always election season.
In India, I'm sure it is all the time election season. But my question is, how do you ensure that you change that narrative that you just spoke about, Sadhguru, about how, it's like the issues are decided by the politician and not by the common man, and how can that happen in a democracy?
See, education, education and education. That's what is needed. There is no political education in school also. Even if you're going through a school process, I'm telling you, the so-called educated youth today, they hardly know how the nation functions. They know everything about the universe on the social media, but they do not know how the nation functions, what are the mechanisms which make this nation, what are the ways in which a citizen can participate in this beyond electoral politics, how can we participate in this? There is no knowledge about this because somewhere we think running the nation or conducting the nation's well-being is in the hands of a few people. I think this is a hangover from the monarchy days, that we think the king will do it, okay? It's not our business kind of thing. I think that has to change.
Do you also, and the reason I ask this question, Sadhguru, is because 2022 is an important milestone for us also as Indians. 75 years of independence, we've come a very, very long way. There is also, however, a debate and a counter-narrative that we've gone back, that rather than progressing, we've also regressed in certain circumstances, in the fact that, the sense of unity, the sense of communal harmony that was there in India isn't there now. Do you think so? Do you think that, religion, unfortunately, is being brought into political discourse and to all other issues because of which there's a lot of polarization?
Then this is being said by people who were not in this country in 1948, okay? What level of division was there and what happened at that time. Nearly 700,000 people died, and the amount of pain that was caused from both sides because of the migration that, it stimulated. Cruel times, even today I've spoken to many people who lived through that partition times. If you listen to those stories, they're too terrible to even talk about. So let us not go on saying this. Yes, there are divisions, yes, there are issues, but is it better? I think it's way, way better than what it was. And we have to just continue on this path, and particularly those people who are openly flouting this need for a nation to be one nation, they must be handled whichever way. There must be laws to handle those situations.
Sadhguru, as I wrap up this interview, through the last few minutes, perhaps from your answers, I've been trying to get an answer for my one question. Where does Sadhguru stand in the political spectrum of things? I have not been able to pinpoint an answer on that.
Because as a political spectrum, my role is just that of one citizen. They have not given me 10,000 votes, I have only one vote. That's where I stand.
Very, very aptly put, Sadhguru. Thank you very much for joining us here on India Today. I'd like to wish you a very happy New Year, to the entire Isha family as well. A very happy and a very, very safe 2022.
Thank you. A wonderful year for you, all of you, and everybody else, all the viewers, and yourself, Akshita. Wonderful talking to you. Namaskar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sadhguru.